was a cloudy Friday afternoon when I finally decided to take a break from work and drive up to the cabin. The place had been sitting mostly empty since I bought it a few months back, a modest A-frame tucked into a wooded stretch of land near the creek, just outside the eastern border of the Silver Echo Heights subdivision. I bought it directly from a ranching family that had owned the land for decades. It was quiet, peaceful, untouched by the manicured hell of suburban perfection. That's what drew me in. After 20-plus years in law enforcement, most of them dealing with fraud, power abuse, and self-important bastards in cheap suits, I just wanted a place to breathe. Maybe finally sit down and write that book everyone keeps telling me to. The first time I drove up there, I felt it. That stillness, the kind you only get when there's no one looking over your shoulder. I parked the truck, stepped out into pine-scented air, and for a moment I thought, this might actually be freedom. I didn't think much about the HOA across the boundary line. My land wasn't part of it, and the title documents confirmed it down to the damn inch. Different zoning, different registration, zero contractual obligations. I was not their concern, or so I thought. On my second visit, I pulled up around 7 in the morning on a Saturday, coffee in hand, plans to finish installing window screens, and maybe get a few hours of writing in. I barely made it to the gate when a white Ford Explorer with a security decal blocked my path. The guy inside stepped out wearing mirrored sunglasses, one of those polyester uniforms that look official if you squint hard enough, and a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt like it was a weapon. "Can I see your renter's permit, sir?" he asked without a hello. His tone was somewhere between suspicion and superiority, the usual cocktail for private security guys who take their job too seriously. I raised an eyebrow. "Pardon?" HOA Silver Echo requires all guests, tenants, and new residents to carry a valid permit and access authorization. It's policy. I took a long sip of my coffee and leaned on the truck door. I'm not in the HOA. My property sits outside the eastern border. Parcel E971. Bought it directly from the Lancaster family. The man furrowed his brow, but didn't move. "Do you have paperwork?" I pulled the deed from the glove box and handed it over. He studied it, flipped it over, looked genuinely disappointed that it was legit. His jaw tightened. "All right, Mr. Rivera, this will be noted." "By who?" I asked. "Protocol," he muttered and handed it back. I could practically see him memorizing my plate number, probably already calling it in to someone who gets paid more than him to be equally useless. I didn't press, just gave him a polite nod, and drove on to my cabin, but not before catching the way he watched me. Not like I was a neighbor, but like I was a problem that hadn't been solved yet. The next morning, I found a crisp piece of paper stuck under my windshield wiper. No envelope, no signature. Just one line in bold. Unauthorized structures are subject to community review. Right. Community. Except I wasn't part of it. I didn't panic. I've seen intimidation tactics 100 times. It was passive-aggressive nonsense, probably a bluff. Still, it was unsettling. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew this game. People like that don't bluff once. They escalate. So I decided to play dumb. See where it led. The next weekend, I parked my truck just outside the HOA gate and walked the rest of the way in. No security that time. I worked on the deck, took photos of the land boundaries, double-checked the GPS coordinates against the deed just to be thorough. Everything lined up. No overlap. No mistake. Before I left that Sunday, I installed a discreet camera under the porch eaves. Motion-triggered, full HD, just in case. I'd trusted people like that before. Clipboard tyrants with tiny fiefdoms, and learned the hard way that they don't back off unless you give them a reason to fear you. I didn't want to pull the badge yet. Not until I had something real, something criminal, and part of me, the part that's been chasing abuse of authority cases for the last 2 decades, was starting to smell something rotten under the polished stone signage of Silver Echo Heights. I pulled up to the property on a late Sunday afternoon, expecting a quiet weekend of work and solitude. The sun was dipping behind the ridge, throwing long shadows across the treetops. But something felt off. Even before I reached the clearing, I could hear the hum of machinery, a low mechanical growl that didn't belong out here. My stomach tightened. I turned off the ignition halfway down the road and coasted in quietly, the truck tires crunching over gravel. When the trees opened up and the land came into view, I froze. My cabin was gone. Not vandalized, not damaged, just gone. Flattened. Scraped clean off the earth like someone hit delete on reality. The foundation was cracked and ripped up. My tool shed was nothing but splinters and twisted nails. Where the porch had been, there was now a mound of fresh dirt and muddy tire tracks. And at the center of the lot sat a goddamn yellow bulldozer, still warm. Nearby, a work truck idled. A few construction workers milled around lazily like they had all the time in the world. And right next to the debris stood a freshly planted metal sign. Unauthorized structure removed. HOA Silver Echo Enforcement. I got out of the truck slowly, methodically, because I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. The kind of heat that comes right before someone makes a decision they can't walk back from. I approached the crew, who were now pretending to be busy with clipboards and avoiding eye contact. "Who's in charge here?" I asked. A foreman-looking guy with a fading neck tattoo finally turned around. "We were sent by the HOA. Got a demo order. Said this building wasn't permitted. Said it was on community easement land. That's all we were told." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Who signed the order?" I asked. He flipped open a wrinkled manila folder and held up a page like it might ward me off. The heading read Silver Echo Heights Property Compliance Division, with a seal that looked halfway legit if you didn't know what real permits looked like. There was a shaky plot diagram that showed my parcel as part of the common greenbelt zone. It was a joke, a fabrication. At the bottom of the form, signed, President Trevor Daly. I took pictures of everything, the document, the bulldozer, the truck plates. I zoomed in on the tire patterns, the soil displacement, even the toolboxes lying around. I wasn't just angry. I was building a case. The workers started getting nervous. "Look, man, we just do what the HOA tells us," one of them said. They gave us access through the west gate. Said everything was cleared. I nodded and kept filming. "I need you all to leave this site. Now, if any of you stay here another minute, I'll be filing criminal trespass charges against you and your company. You were given forged documentation. That makes you victims. For now." That got their attention. Within 5 minutes, the machines were powering down, and the crew was piling into the truck like roaches under a light. I didn't stop recording until the last one disappeared down the trail. Then I walked the perimeter. My boots sank into the freshly disturbed dirt. I found the corner markers I'd flagged just last month. The same markers noted in my deed and verified through the county GIS system. Not one of them had moved. My land hadn't crept an inch into HOA territory. The opposite, if anything. I stood on my own soil and stared at the space where my cabin used to be. I didn't call anyone, not right away. Instead, I set up a folding chair from the truck bed, sat down in the middle of the ruin, and started cataloging everything. Photo, timestamp, video, timestamp. I activated the motion camera I had installed under the eaves. It had survived somehow, because the structure above it had collapsed after the system shut off. I'd later learn it captured the moment a contractor climbed onto the porch and crowbarred the entryway like he was opening a sardine can. Only then did I call the sheriff's department. When the deputy arrived, I didn't flash a badge, didn't pull rank, just introduced myself as Michael Rivera, property owner, victim of unlawful demolition. I handed over my ID, deed, and the fake HOA order. The deputy whistled low under his breath when he saw the signature and tried, poorly, to hide the surprise. "You said you're not part of Silver Echo?" "Number never have been. I've got the zoning records, tax records, and survey data to prove it. And now I've got a crime scene." He scratched his head and looked around. "You want us to tape it off?" "Number, I've got what I need for now. I'll handle the rest." He raised an eyebrow. "You in the business?" I looked him square in the eye. "Let's just say I've dealt with fraud before." He didn't press. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed on site, parked at the edge of the clearing with the windows cracked and the camera recording. I slept light. Not out of fear, out of calculation. I needed to be here when they came back, because people who sign fake orders and destroy private homes without hesitation don't just walk away whistling. They come back to finish the job. Monday morning, I shaved, put on a clean button-down shirt, left the badge in the glove box, and headed straight to the HOA office. Not as Captain Rivera. Not yet. I wanted to see how they played their game when they thought they were holding all the cards. The office sat nestled between a faux European wine bar and a boutique pet spa in the Silver Echo Heights commercial plaza. The kind of sterile, overpriced enclave where someone once decided a fountain would make a parking lot feel cultured. Inside, it was every bit as pretentious as I expected. Gray-washed paneling, abstract art on the walls, and a young receptionist who looked like she'd been trained to smile just hard enough to ward off lawsuits. I asked to speak with Trevor Daly. She told me he was in a meeting, then asked if I had an appointment. I told her I had something better. Paperwork. I held up a manila envelope stuffed with copies of the forged demolition order, the plat map, and a few select photos of what used to be my cabin. I didn't show the original deed. Not yet. She hesitated, picked up the phone, murmured something I couldn't hear, and told me Mr. Daly would see me briefly. The man himself emerged from a back office moments later, oozing suburban authority in a golf pullover and shiny loafers that had clearly never touched dirt. His handshake was damp and arrogant, the type of grip that makes a man feel important to himself. "Mr. Rivera, is it?" he asked. "You had some questions about property boundaries?" "No," I said. "I've got answers. What I'm looking for is yours." He gave me a grin he probably practiced in the mirror every morning. "Let's step into my office." I followed him in, eyes scanning the space. Framed certificates on the wall, community excellence, sustainable governance, that sort of fluff. A shelf of books that hadn't been touched since Obama's first term. He gestured to the seat across from his desk like he was doing me a favor. "So," he said, folding his hands, "this about that cabin up near the East Ridge? I heard there was some confusion." I slid the forged demolition notice across the desk. "I'd call it something stronger than confusion. This is the document your team gave to a contractor to authorize demolition on land that doesn't belong to Silver Echo Heights. That structure was my personal property. The deed is clear. The survey maps confirm it. What I want to know is who authorized this order, and why your name is on it." Trevor barely glanced at the paper. Instead, he leaned back, laced his fingers, and let out a dramatic sigh. "Mr. Rivera, with all due respect, we have protocols. Our enforcement team acted on the best available information. If a mistake was made, I'm sure our legal counsel can—" I leaned forward, cutting him off with a calm, measured voice. There was no mistake. This map, I tapped the plat overlay, was doctored. The original property lines from the county assessor show 0 encroachment. So you're either lying or grossly incompetent. I'm giving you a chance to pick which one before I escalate. His tone shifted, slightly. Not a retreat, but more cautious. Listen, I understand you're upset, and I get it. Really. But this isn't the kind of issue that gets solved by threats. We've dealt with these border complications before. Usually people are willing to work something out. Maybe we can do the same. Oh, I intend to work something out, I said. Then I reached into my jacket and placed my badge gently, quietly, on the table. But not as a homeowner. He stared at it. The smirk collapsed like a house with termites in the beams. Captain Michael Rivera, I said evenly. Fraud Division, Clark County Sheriff's Department. You destroyed my property with forged documentation. That makes this a criminal matter now. Trevor's face turned the shade of uncooked veal. Your police? No, I said. I'm your worst nightmare with a badge and jurisdiction. For a solid 10 seconds, he didn't speak. Just blinked, recalculating every previous word and probably every future one. Look, he started. Maybe we got bad intel. The map. Maybe it came from one of our older records. These things happen. No, Trevor. That's not how this is going to go. You issued a fraudulent order. You authorized a private company to trespass and destroy a lawful structure. And you did it without verifying anything with the county. You crossed a legal line, and I promise you, I'm going to drag every single person involved back across it, in cuffs, if necessary. He swallowed hard and sat very still. Then, in the weakest voice I'd heard all morning, he said, "What do you want?" I stood up, tucked my badge away, and leaned over the desk. I want you to understand something, Trevor. I didn't come here to negotiate. I came here to see how far you'd go to cover your ass. Now I know, which means the real work starts tomorrow. I left the office without another word. As I passed the receptionist, she avoided eye contact. I wasn't surprised. Back in the truck, I sat for a moment, heart steady, mind focused. The bluff had worked. He thought I was just another guy with a property line dispute, until I made it clear this was going criminal. But that wasn't the real play. Not yet. The real game was to let him stew, let him panic, let him make mistakes. Because now the hunt had begun. By Tuesday morning, I was done playing defense. I spent the early hours cross-referencing county GIS data, property records, and demolition permits, or rather, the complete absence of any real permits connected to my lot. Silver Echo Heights had submitted nothing to the Planning Commission, no notice to the county engineer's office, no inspection log. In the official books, my cabin never existed, because HOA pretended it wasn't theirs to report. But someone had to authorize access. Someone let that bulldozer in through a locked HOA maintenance gate, and someone had just left enough of a trail to make my job very, very interesting. I didn't file an official report through my department yet. I wanted this quiet, for now. That meant leveraging off-duty contacts, retired friends, and a couple of former task force investigators who owed me favors. One of them, Carla Reyes, had a knack for data retrieval and once cracked a real estate shell corporation in under 24 hours. I brought her coffee and a USB stick loaded with HOA correspondence I'd scraped from public emails. It took her less than 10 minutes to find something suspicious. "They're using a pass-through contractor," she said, scrolling through metadata. "Clear Edge Demolition. Listed in Nevada under a P.O. box. No corporate filings, no real website. The registered agent is a guy named Kevin Maris, who also happens to own 3 LLCs that develop Greenbelt-adjacent properties." I didn't even have to ask. Carla was already running Maris through our department database. Suspended contractor's license. Open complaint for unlicensed demolition. Previously fined for unsafe site conduct. "You smell that?" she said with a smirk. I nodded. Rotten. We set up a secure drop server for everything we found and labeled it Project Boundary. I didn't want this vanishing into thin air if someone got nervous or tried to bury the investigation. But that wasn't all. The more I dug, the more this stopped being about me. I visited the property adjacent to mine. An older man named Bert Hansen lived there. Quiet, mid-70s, a Navy vet with arthritis, and a dog that barked like a chainsaw. He'd built a small workshop near the creek years ago, but the shack was gone now, flattened. Looked recent. Bert didn't want to talk at first, but when I showed him the forged documents from my demolition, he finally opened up. "They sent me a letter last month," he said, voice shaking. "Told me I was encroaching, that if I didn't voluntarily surrender the disputed footage, they'd fine me $10,000. I signed the agreement just to make them go away." He showed me the letter. It was nearly identical to the fake order used on my cabin, except his included a waiver form with language that gave Silver Echo Heights permission to reclaim community green space. I scanned a copy, thanked him, and promised he wouldn't be alone in this. By Thursday, I had enough. It was time to start turning the screws. I contacted a freelance tech specialist I'd worked with during an internal corruption sting. A guy named Ezra, part hacker, part caffeine-fueled gremlin, who once embedded an entire tracking system into a potted plant for a bribery case. I explained the situation, told him I wanted ears inside the HOA office, not wiretaps, nothing illegal, just a reason to be inside their IT infrastructure. Ezra grinned. "You want me to be their savior. Got it." We created a persona, Jay Taylor, independent cybersecurity consultant with a fake website, a LinkedIn profile, and 2 staged client reviews from law firms who didn't actually exist. Then I filed a fake complaint through HOA's website, posing as a resident. "Urgent, leaked Wi-Fi traffic. Is HOA email secure?" Sure enough, I got a call 2 hours later. They wanted an audit. Confidential, of course. Discretion advised. Perfect. Ezra showed up the next morning, polite and nerdy, with blue light glasses and a whole bag of excuses. He ran network diagnostics, installed a few firmware patches, and, more importantly, left behind a disguised relay chip that granted us access to their internal server backups and email logs. Within 48 hours, we had gold. A transcript of an internal meeting where Daly told the board, "We take the ridge, get rid of the old-timers, and repackage the slope as exclusive. That lot next to the creek? We already demoed it. The new buyers lined up. Just keep it off the books until October." And another email from HOA Council instructing their assistant to burn all original land survey PDFs and use only our clean revision in packet mailings to residents. They weren't just breaking the law. They were orchestrating a scheme to eliminate inconvenient properties, falsify zoning, and flip parcels for profit. And now I had their voices saying it out loud. I didn't rush. I started building timelines, matching statements to GIS changes, photographing easement markers, flagging every date and discrepancy. At night, I edited footage from my porch camera and uploaded it to a channel I created under the name HOA Watchdog. I narrated over the footage calmly, outlining every step. How my cabin disappeared, how the demolition was unpermitted, how the HOA president denied wrongdoing. I blurred faces for now, kept it clean. Just a man asking questions. By the end of the first week, the video had 12,000 views. I had no intention of stopping there. By the following Tuesday, HOA watchdog had gone from a curiosity to a wildfire. The second video, titled "Who Gave the Order to Destroy My Cabin?" hit 23,000 views in 3 days. I kept the tone measured, never claimed more than I could prove, just laid out the facts with timestamps, location overlays, and audio clips that danced right up to the edge of incriminating without crossing legal lines. But the next move wasn't public. It was surgical. Ezra's relay device kept feeding us email traffic. On Wednesday night, we got a hit. An internal message from HOA's vice president to Trevor Daly. Urgent. I reviewed the cleaned surveys. Lot E971 is clearly outside. Do we have anything better to cover this if it goes legal? The reply came less than 5 minutes later. Use the archive file from Phase 2 expansion proposal. Slide the overlay 4 meters. No one will cross-check. Just stall. They were actively coordinating the fabrication, adjusting plats to slide properties into HOA control by a matter of feet, hoping no one would notice or care. The gall wasn't even the most shocking part. It was how casually they treated it. Like it was just business as usual. I wasn't done being quiet, though. Not yet. I sent a carefully worded email to the Silver Echo Legal Counsel using an anonymous domain. Dear Counsel, as of today, I possess audio, video, and metadata documentation of at least 4 felony counts committed by HOA board members, including unlawful demolition, document falsification, and wire fraud. You have 72 hours to issue a public retraction and restitution proposal. If I see another lie in the press, or get another notice posted on my property line, I go federal. I never signed it. Never needed to. The fear would do the work. Meanwhile, I kept building pressure online. I uploaded a new episode. What happens when HOA power goes unchecked? It focused less on me and more on the broader implications. Neighbors like Bert Hansen, families pushed off the border zones, survey maps altered with casual impunity. This wasn't just about a cabin. It was about land theft, hiding behind trimmed hedges and decorative water features. That same day, a reporter from a local investigative blog reached out. "I've been following your uploads," she said. "You want to go on record?" "Not yet, but you'll get a scoop when the time's right." I wasn't bluffing. I was aiming for timing. I needed them cocky. I needed Trevor to think he'd spun this tight enough to avoid fallout. I wanted him to say something stupid. And then he did. Ezra's back door caught an email forwarded from Trevor to their demolition contractor. Kevin Maris, our P.O. Box shadow man. Push Phase 2 by end of quarter. Ignore complaints from E971 and E972. We've got counsel cover. Nothing they can prove. Beautiful. Arrogant. Admissible. The next step was mine. I called an old friend in the district attorney's office, Sean Brockman, who used to specialize in white-collar crime. Sent him a full package marked Confidential, Active Fraud Investigation. Sean's reply was a single line. Let's bury them. We scheduled a preliminary meeting with a judge for a sealed subpoena. Once granted, Sean's team would quietly issue production demands for HOA financial records, expansion plans, and land surveys. But before we went official, I had one more play. Silver Echo Heights was holding its quarterly member meeting that Saturday. In person, mandatory for voting members, live-streamed for transparency. I didn't qualify to attend as a member, but that wasn't going to stop me, because by then I already had my invitation. One of the HOA's own board secretaries had contacted me anonymously through the Watchdog channel. Said she had doubts, said she hadn't signed up for this kind of corruption. I offered a meeting. We met in a diner at the edge of town. She looked nervous but determined. She handed me a USB drive. "I don't want to be part of this anymore," she said. "I copied everything. Emails, recordings, even that meeting last month where Trevor told us to get aggressive. It's all there." I didn't ask why she flipped. I didn't need to. Everyone breaks somewhere. That night, I didn't sleep, because in less than 48 hours, I was going to walk into their temple of suburban authority and bring the roof down on their heads. Saturday morning arrived like a loaded gun. I'd ironed a plain navy shirt, no badge, no weapon, just a thumb drive in my pocket and a folder full of printouts, digital timestamps, contractor invoices, forged plat maps, emailed transcripts. I didn't walk in like a man with a grudge. I walked in like a man holding a detonator. The Silver Echo Heights Community Center was packed. Folding chairs in neat rows, retirees in pastel sweaters sipping from branded water bottles, couples clutching HOA packets like sacred texts. At the front, a polished mahogany podium flanked by two flags, State and HOA. Of course, they had their own flag. These people would probably pledge allegiance to a hedge if it was properly pruned. I stood at the back as the meeting started. Trevor Daly stepped up to the podium in his usual uniform of performance management. Slick polo, smile like a credit card ad. He launched into his presentation. Beautification efforts, community security upgrades, clarifying ambiguous border easements. That was the phrase he used, as if bulldozing homes could be smoothed over with semantics. I waited. I watched him talk about unity and safety, all while ignoring the burn spreading through the crowd. Rumors had begun to trickle. People had seen the watchdog videos. Some recognized the photos, the maps. A woman in the third row whispered to her husband while pointing to the screen showing HOA's expansion zone. My demolished cabin was still labeled as Greenbelt Opportunity. Then Trevor made his mistake. He said, "Despite misinformation circulating online, I want to assure all of you that every action taken by this board has followed legal process. We've acted in the community's best interests." I stepped forward and raised my hand. People turned. Trevor hesitated, just long enough. "Sir, this meeting is for HOA members," he said, already annoyed. "Understood," I replied. "But when you bulldozed a home that wasn't yours, you made it my business. And now it's the DA's too." I pulled the folder from my bag and walked straight to the projector table. There was a tech guy manning the laptop. I handed him the thumb drive. "Play the video marked HOA internal recording, March 14th. The room quieted. Trevor's voice filled the speakers, grainy but unmistakable. "We take the ridge, rezone the creek lots, and flip them before the quarter ends. The county's backlogged. They won't notice. Just don't tell the old folks." Murmurs, then outrage. I clicked to the next slide. A forged demolition order with his signature. Then a time-stamped clip from the porch camera. The moment my front steps were ripped off by a claw. "I am Michael Rivera," I said, facing the crowd. "I own lot E971. Your board illegally seized and destroyed my property. They falsified documents, manipulated land records. They threatened other residents, and they did it thinking no one would notice." Security moved toward me, but they stopped halfway, because behind me, two uniformed officers from the district attorney's office walked in. Sean Brockman followed, holding a stack of warrants. "Trevor Daly," Sean announced, "you are under arrest for document falsification, unlawful demolition, conspiracy to defraud, and abuse of authority. Please step forward." Trevor paled. He didn't move, so the officers did. They cuffed him in full view of the board and the community. A collective gasp rippled through the room. One of the other board members tried to slip out the side door. Didn't make it. Another arrest. The meeting never resumed. It imploded, and I stood there, silent, steady, watching the whole thing collapse, exactly as I'd planned. 6 months later, the cabin stood again. It wasn't exactly the same. The original was thrown together over weekends with borrowed tools and cheap lumber. This one had bones, reinforced frame, steel braces in the foundation, double-pane windows, and a porch that stretched out like a landing strip into the trees. I added a hunter green metal roof, not just for aesthetics, but because I wanted it loud. I wanted to hear every raindrop, every branch that tried to sneak by. The insurance payout, combined with the civil judgment for damages and emotional distress, more than covered the rebuild. But the money didn't matter. What mattered was this. The land was officially and permanently recorded as non-HOA. The county assessor's office updated the database themselves, with a footnote declaring the parcel outside any neighborhood association jurisdiction. It felt like carving a scar into a map, a permanent reminder that this land had bled and survived. I installed 2 new cameras, one visible, mounted to the porch post, the other hidden. Old habits die hard. I also added a custom wood-carved sign, bolted into a thick pine out front. It read, "Private property. Police officer, enter at your own risk." No one from Silver Echo ever crossed within 100 feet of my fence line again. Not after what happened. Trevor Daly took a plea. 4 years in state prison, eligible for parole in 2. He wept during sentencing, said he never meant for anyone to be hurt. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he just missed his swimming pool and espresso machine. His attorney blamed systemic overreach and poor administrative training. The judge didn't care. Called it what it was. Organized fraud. The HOA collapsed in on itself like a bad soufflé. Most board members resigned. Others were subpoenaed. Contractors vanished. The community hired an outside mediator to review all past actions. They even mailed me a letter asking if I wanted to participate in the review. I framed it and hung it next to the porch door, right under the motion sensor. Every so often, someone passes by. A hiker. A lost Amazon driver. They pause, read the sign, and keep walking. Good. Let the cabin stay quiet. Let the trees remember what happened here. Let the land rest.